Terrell Suggs called out the Baltimore Ravens, and, well, he's not exactly wrong.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And we have a jam-packed episode today, as we always do here. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens content. Terrell Suggs called out the Ravens. We'll talk about that, as well as Todd Monken getting real on Lamar Jackson and what's going on with him missing practice and then coming back to practice. And we'll get into some Ravens and Bengals Week 15 notes, some thoughts on that game, some updates, injury stuff, and a lot more there too. So we always have you covered here on Locked On Ravens, and let's jump into it. Terrell Suggs, he obviously Raven legend, and he was on the Get Got pod with Marshawn Lynch and Mike Robinson. And so these bonus episodes, we use them to talk about stuff we didn't get to throughout the week. Maybe there's a big headline. So this actually came out before the game against Pittsburgh, and I'm actually now curious to hear what Terrell Suggs would have said had this come out after the game against Pittsburgh, because I'm sure would have called the Ravens out more. But Terrell Suggs did call the Ravens out. Mike Robinson asked him, what's going on with the Ravens, man? And Terrell Suggs, well, he didn't hold back, and he's not known for holding back. And he had a lot of things to say. He said, quote, saying it without saying it, we've got a lot of school teachers out there. Some people, I'm wondering, are you sure this is for you? This is the league. You're going to get got sometimes, but repeatedly by dudes on the other team. Then he was talking about how, these are guys who aren't even on the scouting report that they're getting routed up by and whatnot. And he said, quote, the fans don't get it. There's more going on than what you see. They want to blame Harbaugh. They want to blame Zach Orr. I'm like, they're trying to make caviar out of meatloaf. You got to ask yourself, is this for you? Talking about the players again. And said in Baltimore, we don't play that. We've had bad seasons, but we didn't have bad defensive seasons. We're a sure thing. And, I'll stop there before reading off the rest of what he had to say. But again, I think he's more so focusing on this from the defensive angle. But it's jarring, honestly, with this defense. And look, they kind of found their rhythm in the middle part of the season a little bit, but we all know that the schedule they were going, or at least they had there, and that certainly played a part. And I know that Jonas Schaefer laid out a stat a couple of days ago over at the Baltimore Banner, which kind of encapsulates what this team has not done against really, really good quarterbacks. And, they have to be better against Pro Bowl quarterbacks. They have 258.7 passing yards allowed per game, 14 touchdowns, no interceptions, 67.6% accuracy, and an 0-6 record. And Jonas notes that Joe Burrow, Drake May, and Jordan Love, those are the 3 guys next on the Ravens schedule. And look, we know the Ravens had an easy part of their schedule in the middle of the year. They did what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to beat up on bad teams. But even then, it didn't look as inspiring as I kind of hoped it would. I thought it'd honestly look a little better. And despite the fact that they got wins and defensively it did look better, they've gotten aggressive with their blitzing, and there's still missed tackles. They're still blown coverages, and I'm not expecting perfection. Nobody should be expecting perfection. But, Terrell Suggs clearly is had it. He's fed up. He's voiced his displeasure on social media, done it on podcast as well. And look, I don't blame him because, Terrell Suggs is very passionate. He's very proud. And, with all those defensive units that he was on over the course of his Ravens career, it is jarringly different than what he was a part of. And I do want to address the part where he said they want to blame Harbaugh. They want to blame Zach Orr. I'm like, they're trying to make caviar out of meatloaf. This was kind of the message that Terrell Suggs has sent before where, and again, like I said, Terrell Suggs is very proud and he's not going to make excuses. So him coming from that player perspective, I'll read the rest of his answer because it actually adds on even more to that context. So he said, quote, if you've got contract incentives and you're playing us, you're like, oh man, I'm finna get it. They probably need to get a deal done because I'm finna have a day. I've never seen the type of stuff that's going on. And it's not everybody, but every coordinator will tell you it's not the call. Ain't no call going to save you. At some point, you've got to be like, I'm not going to let my guy get the ball. I'm not going to let my guy beat us. We don't want to hear any excuses about, oh, we're injured and banged up. Like, we know everybody's been through seasons where they've had injuries. The injury rate in the NFL is 100%. We anticipate that. Dude, you've got to grow up. A lot of people got to grow up now, especially down the stretch if you want to be playing in January. So, yeah, again, like, I think he's coming at this from the defensive perspective, but obviously I'm sure that there's a whole team message in here somewhere from Terrell Suggs. But where he's saying, ain't no call going to save you. And we've heard others talk about it as well, star defensive players and other guys who are like, look, between those lines, it's on the players. And, to me, I think it's everybody. Like, I totally understand and respect what Terrell Suggs is saying. And look, it's true that John Harbaugh's not going out there and, letting guys beat him or getting thrown on the ground by offensive linemen. That is 100% accurate. And when you talk about Zach Orr, it's the same type of conversation. And I will say, I do think that Zach Orr it's gotten better than what it was at the beginning of the season. And I know that's a very low bar, but it's just fundamental mistakes or giving up stuff on third down. And, there was that play call against the Steelers last week where Jaylen Warren had that touchdown untouched, and that was multiple blown assignments. John Harbaugh had said, I don't agree with them necessarily blitzing in that situation, but that's kind of become their identity a little bit more, is being that aggressive defense. But, when you have that call schemed up, and if those assignments aren't blown, maybe it's a different conversation about touchdown versus maybe he gets stopped behind the line. Maybe he gets stopped before the first down marker. I'm not sure. But there is added context to everything. But the bottom line of what Terrell Suggs is saying is like, hey, guys have to step up regardless here. And look, his message is right. Like, if you want to be playing in January and have a chance there, multiple guys have to step up. And I know a lot of the conversations about the offense right now and the offensive line, which, again, like, I'm sure this message also applies to. But, with Terrell Suggs and what he's saying, like, it's just really disappointing the year this team has had. It's probably one of the most, if not the most disappointing seasons in this franchise's history based off of expectations. But, the messaging we've also heard from the players as well is like, the players aren't throwing Zach Orr under the bus here. I mean, we've heard it from Kyle Hamilton and others as well that, like, the guys sticking up for Zach Orr in that locker room. So I think that's just the player perspective, right? At least for the most part, is, they understand that they have to go out there and do their job. And when there's a miscommunication, when there's a bad play, like, I do believe that Zach Orr has called bad plays. We've talked about it a lot, where I think some of the scheme stuff wasn't great. They were playing guys super off at times and, not blitzing effectively. But now I think, even though they've gotten a little bit better in a lot of different defensive categories, and it certainly is better now than it was early in the season, there's still too much inconsistency on both sides of the ball. And that's a really big problem because, like we talked about, those Pro Bowl quarterbacks are carving you up. So they had a really big opportunity in the last couple of weeks, both offensively and defensively. But, regardless, as a team, to go out there and show against Cincinnati and Pittsburgh in weeks 13 and 14 that, hey, yeah, we didn't play great teams these last handful of weeks, but we're going to show you now against better teams, better offenses that, yeah, it's not just a fluke. And they fell flat on their face. They just fell flat on their face. And, he didn't call anybody out by name, no specific player or anything like that, because I do truly think it's a 3-level thing: pass rush, middle level, secondary. Like, everybody needs to step up, and it's not getting any easier. Again, it is not getting any easier. So, I mean, I think that Terrell Suggs is right in saying a lot of this. And, I don't think the Ravens are necessarily using excuses here, but again, like, it's on John Harbaugh to have his guys ready, but it's not on him that, he's not going out there and covering Jamar Chase every single play. But, some of the game plan stuff and all that, like, it does fall on the coaches, in my opinion. But, I also think that, players have to step up here. And it's a difficult conversation to have when you have so many accomplished veterans and guys who have been to Pro Bowls and other big accolade players, stars in multiple different positions. But look, if a guy's not playing well, a guy's not playing well. And we do know that the Ravens did not go after a star player at the pass rush position, and their pass rush has struggled this season. Nanwabike going down really did hurt them. And it's tough because, like, you're missing him. He's a big, important part of your front line. But, you're supposed to be able to, at least with the roster they had for the most part, be able to recover from that. But the other problem is that, they didn't bring in a Micah Parsons or a Trey Hendrickson or a Max Crosby. And I didn't expect them to, but it would have been really nice. And now I think that Ravens have to kind of reimagine and reapproach how they do things this offseason. Because I do think you need stars in the trenches. I think you do. And, with what Terrell Suggs is saying, he, is not calling out every single player on the Ravens defense or every single player on the Ravens team. But, when that call is put in there, it is your job to execute. Obviously, the call has to be correct and you got to read the system there. But, if that call is correct and, the players don't execute, it's not on the coordinator because the call was there, So there's only so many things a coordinator can do. But at the same time, I think blame does fall on everybody, the head coach, the coordinator, the players. And again, like the pieces of that blame pie, they're going to go everywhere. And, in Terrell Suggs' case, he's putting almost all, if not all, the blame on that player. John and Zach Gordon even got a piece of that blame pie. So it's interesting. And I really appreciate hearing all these different perspectives because, it gives us just something to think about and understand. But, I do think it does fall on everybody. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Todd Monken getting real on Lamar Jackson's practice situation. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Zocdoc. Guys, it's 2025, almost 2026, and those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see a doctor, they're over. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously, and Zocdoc makes that easier than ever because staying healthy is more than hitting the gym, reading right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using Zocdoc makes scheduling easier. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits, so no more back-and-forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. It's super helpful for routine checkups and those little issues you've been meaning to get checked out. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. And the show is brought to you by Car Gurus. Car shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. With Car Gurus, you get the confidence you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on the cars you want, because when it comes to a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. And Car Gurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else so you can shop the way you want. Use Car Gurus deal ratings to compare cars quickly without having to guess whether the price is fair. You'll love being able to filter by everything: mileage, trim, features. So you're only seeing the cars that actually fit what you need. Their price drop alerts are a lifesaver. You get notified the second a car you're watching becomes a better deal as well. Car Gurus connects you with trusted dealerships for a transparent, hassle-free buying process with over 4 million listings, the most of any major online automotive marketplace. You'll always find the best deal. Shop the way you want with the tools, data, and unbiased deal ratings that make it easy. Buy or sell your next car today at CarGurus.com. That's CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you on the Saturday bonus edition of the show. Thanks for spending a little bit of your weekend here with me on Locked On Ravens today. We do have our main show Monday through Friday, as well as instant reactions to breaking news and games. We have watch-alongs during games. We have the Locked On Ravens squad show with myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail, and so much more Ravens content. We just launched the Everydayer program, so if you want to support the show a little bit more, links in the description below for some extra add-on content that doesn't affect the regular nature of the show or anything we offer here, but that's all cool. We actually did our first Friday late night Q&A yesterday, which was really cool, so be sure you check that out as well. Let's talk about Todd Monken and what he had to say about Lamar Jackson. And, I think it's interesting what Lamar's practice routine has been. I don't blame a guy for wanting to get rest. And to me, I just think it's become this huge conversation point where people are just like, all right, well, Lamar has to be out there and he has to do this and he has to do that. And it's different because Lamar, we haven't really seen that with Lamar Jackson taking like rest days or vet days. But, Lamar did talk about it himself and, actually said that the rest is one of the most important things when he's recovering from an injury. So he said that that's been helpful for him, which, okay, cool. Like that's great. Like I'm glad it is. Todd Monken waited on it though, and he got honest about it, where he talked about like what it actually means for Lamar to, miss practice. And I thought it was interesting what he had to say because of the fact that, you're not only talking about the mental side of it, but the timing with the receivers and the physical part of it. So that's some of the stuff that Monken said. He said that there are some challenges with that, and there just is. And he said, quote, "It's not just Lamar, it's any player that misses time. You have to find a way to overcome that because nobody cares and we can't care." He said, "When we take the field, we need the product to look like we want it to look like, and we need to score points." And, talked about that, was very more so just like very fired up about the Bengals game. And, they're giving themselves a shot every game. They haven't turned it over. And he said when they haven't turned it over, they're given a chance in every single game, which is true. But, look, if Lamar needs a rest day to feel a little better for Sunday, okay. Like I'm not going to freak out about it. A lot of guys Ronnie Stanley got a rest day yesterday. So like, it's that kind of stuff where I'm not freaking out about Ronnie Stanley getting a rest day on Friday. So I'm not going to freak out about Lamar. Now, again, like a quarterback and an offensive lineman, it is a little bit different. But, at the end of the day, I think it's not as big of a deal. Now, I do think it's not nothing, though. I do think it's not nothing, where the timing of receivers, having a guy out there, it is very important. And actually, we've had former coaches and former players talk about that. But I would rather have Lamar feel like he is as close to 100% as possible going out there on Sunday. And if that takes a rest day for him because he is banged up and he needs that to feel better, then okay. It's not ideal, right? It's not ideal. I'd rather him be out there all 3 days practicing fully. But this is just kind of the situation the Ravens are in right now, where Lamar is still probably banged up a little bit here and needs the time off. And okay, that's fine. Because realistically, if Lamar didn't practice for all 3 days, he probably still could play. In fact, not probably, he still could play. And I think be all right. I think he would be all right. Now, again, getting that timing down and the way that this pass offense has looked at times this season, specifically recently, I think it is important that, Lamar goes out there as much as he can. But if that rest day is what he needs, then okay. Look, on the year, there's no conversation about his timing and targets with Zay Flowers this season. Zay has almost 40 more targets than the next closest guy to him, which is Mark Andrews. 95 targets compared to 57 for Mark Andrews. Zay has it's exactly 550 yards more than Mark Andrews does, who was the next closest, 891 compared to 341. So Zay has practically been the Ravens' entire pass offense, and then Mark Andrews has 5 touchdowns on the year, which leads Zay only has 1 on the season. But it's for guys like Rashod Bateman, who actually was downgraded in practice on Friday, so we'll see. But like DeAndre Hopkins, getting that timing down. And DeAndre is a savvy vet. He kind of knows how to work a football field, work back to the quarterback. Like all that stuff is there. But even for guys like Charlie Kolar, or getting Isaiah Likely, or even like a Tez Walker, who if Bateman doesn't play in this game, he'll have a big role, I think. So it's about getting that timing down. That is what everybody's talking about in terms of like the timing with receivers. Because when Tyler Huntley's out there, he's not Lamar. So you don't get those reps in, and on the football field, you can kind of go off script like Lamar and Mark do, and sometimes Lamar and Zay do, but it's very hard to do that when you just don't have as many reps as those guys, especially Mark, have had with Lamar Jackson. But even still, we've seen players not practice over the course of the entire week and play. We've seen quarterbacks not practice over the course of an entire week and play and play well. I just think there are so many other underlying factors here that, when we're talking about Lamar Jackson and this practice situation, this just feels like it's going to be the new norm here for the rest of the season. And then maybe Lamar gets healthy in the offseason, and then he's back to practicing fully, every single day of the week. But if you keep him off his feet for a day and that lets him be more like Lamar on Sunday, then I think that's a trade-off that I am more than willing to accept, even if it does mean there's a little less, chemistry with receivers. I have confidence in Lamar that if he's feeling healthier, again, because he's not going to feel healthy, Lamar can bounce back. I mean, I guess I have to believe that at this point because we know Lamar's a superstar player, but unfortunately, over the last month, the results have not been superstar-esque for a multitude of different reasons. Coming up in the final part of the show, we will dive into some Ravens and Bengals notes for week number 15. Stay tuned. Plenty coming your way here on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Saturday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here again. Follow me on social media, Cashrecord34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. Also, if you have a friend or a family member who wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them our way over here on Locked On Ravens. We're building up an awesome community, almost 17,000 subscribers in video form. The audio form continues to grow every single day. Again, the everydayer community, if you want to check that out, be sure to go to the link in the description down below. We got the watch along community. I mean, we have so many different communities within the whole Locked On Ravens community. It truly is amazing. Let's talk about this Bengals game. Ravens and Bengals round 2, obviously the first game. We don't talk about that one. It's not a good one. Didn't go well for the Ravens, but it does add important context, especially when it comes down to look, that Ravens defense held on for dear life in the first half of that game and didn't let the Bengals score touchdowns for the most part, really until the touchdowns kind of flooded in the second half of that game. But, Bengals starting from the Ravens 3-yard line off of turnovers. And look, do I expect the Ravens to turn the ball over 5 times in this game? No. I mean, if they turn the ball over 5 times in this game, I don't even know what I would do. I mean, I was furious then. I'd be furious if they did that. 10 turnovers. No, I can practically guarantee, I can't guarantee anything 100%, but I can practically guarantee that is not going to happen. Now, this Bengals team defensively is not good. It's a not good defensive group. They are last in scoring defense, last in yards given up. They are last in first downs allowed. They are second to last, in passing yards allowed and touchdowns allowed through the air. They are last in rushing yards allowed. They are second to last in yards per attempt, both rushing and passing. I could go on and on and on. It's a bad defensive group, and they had been playing better since their bye week until that Buffalo game. And, you just can't allow this defensive group to get 2 over on you. They got 1 over on you. You can't allow this group to get 2 over on you. Trey Hendrickson is not going to play in this game. He is done for the season. So the Ravens will avoid Trey Hendrickson this season, which, based off the way their offensive line is playing, yeah, that's very good. But we do now know that T. Higgins is not going to play in this game, ruled out with a concussion. So they're not going to have him, and Shamar Stewart is doubtful for this game with a knee injury. He's on IR, so they're not going to activate him, it looks like. But T. Higgins being out, that's a big deal, but didn't stop Cincinnati the first time around. They still have receivers that can make you pay. Now, Mitchell Tinsley, he didn't have a good game against the Ravens the first time around, but he's been someone that has stepped up a little bit for them with a big catch here or there. Only 7 catches on the year, but he's going to be getting more opportunities with T. Higgins out. You also have Andre Oshivash, who has played really well for the Bengals when called upon. He had a touchdown in that Ravens game, obviously, but we'll probably also see Chase Brown, who actually is second on this team in catches out of the backfield. Samaje Perine could make an impact. We know that the Bengals tight end trio of Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, and Tanner Hudson, those are guys that can make impacts as well. But speaking of tight ends, the Ravens have to utilize their tight ends and utilize them effectively. The Bengals have been horrendous against tight ends. The the Bills beat the Bengals essentially because their tight ends played so well between Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. They got the job done. And for the Ravens, we saw Isaiah Likely go off against the Bengals outside of that fumble in the end zone. They had trouble stopping him and keeping him in check. So how you do that is you establish your run game early, in my opinion, with Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell. And then you work from there with play action, forcing those linebackers and safeties to take a step up and cheat down into that run game. And then you pull that ball back and you just float the ball over the linebackers' heads and the safeties' heads to get the ball to your tight ends. I'm hoping for a bounce back Mark Andrews game here after signing that extension. Kind of laid a dud in that one against the Steelers in week 14, but you have a real opportunity here. Now, the Bengals, for their conversion rates and percentages, they're not good. They're not a good third down defense. They're 31st in the NFL. They're second to last in the league in third down defense. They are bottom 5, 28th in the league in red zone defense. Now, offensively, they're a great third down team. They're 7th in the NFL on third down. And meanwhile, for Baltimore, their third down defense, while it is good and their red zone defense has become good, like they've actually found ways to stop teams. We know the red zone offense is terrible. They're 30th in the league in red zone percentage on offense. They cannot convert touchdowns in that area. It's been a huge problem for them. Obviously, the offensive line is going to have to step up in this one because you can't have this Bengals defense just brimming with confidence like we saw in that week 13 game. And we know how important this game is for both teams. I mean, the Bengals will be mathematically eliminated with a loss here to the Ravens, but the Ravens essentially will be all but eliminated with a loss here because their division record would fall to 2-3, and they'd fall to 6-8 on the season. And if Pittsburgh gets that win over the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, it's essentially a 3-game lead in the division at that point for Pittsburgh, still with that Week 18 matchup looming. But we know the Ravens have the Patriots and Packers coming up, 2 not easy games. So got to play with a sense of urgency. John Harbaugh says, destiny's in their hands, which is technically, I mean, look, if they win all their games, then they have that. So you got to start now, though. And we know how good Joe Burrow is. We know how amazing Jamar Chase is. In my opinion, you just let anybody else beat you. I'm cloud covering. I'm triple covering. I'm doing whatever you can to take Jamar Chase out of this football game, something Baltimore really hasn't done since Brandon Stevens did it back in 2023. So, this team needs to wake up. I expect this game to be a lot closer than the first one because honestly, with Cincinnati, yes, they're also playing off their back foot, but they'd have to have so much go right to make the postseason, which isn't completely, I mean, it's possible. There's not a 0% chance that they don't make the playoffs, but Baltimore right now, they tend to play better with their backs against the wall. I don't know how confident I feel in saying that, especially this season, but you just have to step up. It starts here. You got to continue it. This is the most important game. I mean, look, the Packers game, if you win the Patriots and Bengals games, you can afford to lose that game if Pittsburgh drops a game or two. Like, that's fine. That's an NFC loss if it comes down to it. But these AFC North games, I mean, this will make or break your season, in my opinion. You cannot let Cincinnati be the team that essentially all but knocks you out of the postseason race. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have our pregame episode before the game. And then, of course, we'll have the watch along during the game, the instant reaction after, and the squad show after that. So be sure to stay tuned. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.